we prepared a little bit how to explain how the work developed and what was our intention with it, and also talk a little bit about previous works that were actually influenced this piece in the Weltmuseum in Vienna for the show. So then, Bojan and I, we worked together with those on those works which combine text and image in different ways and formats, also in some performative actions and visual arts and theater. But we decided for this occasion to start from the visual point of what was the visual point of departure for this work, this specific work. So maybe I can now say, let's say for myself, maybe you saw in this catalog the works that are representing the topographies of Emancipation and Coercion from the beginning. So like in a lot of my previous works, which are mostly in this case drawings and paintings, basically. I dealt with the representation and the explicit representation of violence, exploitation, and all those social tensions in different parts of the world, differently presented. So this is something that I explored how to represent a lot in the previous works. And then at one point, somehow I was thinking, okay, let's see how the abstract image works and what are the, in a way, social and political stories and background that are somehow behind the abstract image or form. And this is something that I started working on like several years ago. And at one point, this, let's say, artistic research of mine met with Bojan's, who at the same time somehow did the research on communistic poetry and literature from Yugoslav, mostly Yugoslav heritage, let's say it like that. And also how the leftist ideas can be presented and staged in some format between the performative acts and theater and visual arts context, let's say. And the first work of that kind was the Orientation in 100 Revolutions, actually, that was presented, with Marina presented a few years ago at the conference that was on occasion of 100 years of October Revolution. And then after that, we also, it was also like a huge print on textile as those images are, and text that is accompanying it. And actually the text was about different kind of revolutionary movements, riot and anti-establishment uprisings. And the other part of this text was one chapter from Oskar Davičo, a surrealist author from Yugoslavia, who is also listing different entities that might raise their voice or hands in the favor of some uprising. Yes.
And part of this excerpt is actually in the catalogue as well.
Yes, and then for this occasion, we also were thinking how to develop this situation where you have this strong picture, which is between abstract and figurative in a way, but also functions as some kind of, how to say it, like a front or picture or surface that actually invites you to think about it, but also behind it, or in a way it's, let's say, backstage, it hides or doesn't hide, but actually keeps the like a story and narrative about ideology and politics and actually different kind of stories, let's say it that way. So for this occasion, we selected 3 of those images and let's say 3 moments from the history that we somehow articulated in the form of text.
So I think, as Siniša said, it was important also for him, but for me, this sort of movement or a departure from these figurative images and exploration of the abstract painting, but also exploration of the abstract painting or abstract visual language, or we can even say, both in case of this work and this previous orientation in 100 revolutions, abstract language related or rooted in the avant-garde, in the historical avant-garde, mostly Soviet avant-garde, but also the others, and its relation to a text that is actually explicit in its political intention, in its description of events, and this is also something that that guided us in figuring out this work as a response to the topic of the exhibition, and sort of we decided to take 3 moments from the 20th century. Also, they were formulated as actually three historical events that come from different layers of life. One is an artistic rebellion, which is actually a response, a counter exhibition to the famous colonial exhibition that happened in Paris in 1931. So the members of the Communist Party, French Communist Party, in collaboration with the several surrealist artists, actually made a counter exhibition that that in a way spoke about the background of the splendor and glamour of the colonial glories and enterprises and accomplishments. And what was interesting also is that this exhibition took part in famous Melnikov's exhibition pavilion that was built several years before for the famous exposition of arts décoratifs. The second image actually had to do with this moment of emancipation in the 20th century that is for us connected to the long history of the worker struggle and organization, and that culminated in several communist and socialist revolutions. But the actual event that we took as some kind of inspiration or an important point is the foundation of the non-aligned countries that were, their main goal was to stand between the polarized world, between the East and West, and most of those countries were actually ex-colonies that were demanding, and this is what we also quote extensively in the audio guide for the second image. Okay, so the third event that we took as a starting point was actually an event from 1991 when a ship from an Albanian port, port of Durrës was hijacked by something like 20,000 migrants from Albania who wanted to cross to Italy, and this was one of these first iconic images of the kind of migrations that were actually to follow within the next decades, and that are still happening today, and that are actually in a way absolutely questioning the entire notion of Europe as a place that somehow orders and regulates the migration, the lives of people who can enter, who cannot enter, and that somehow returns in a way to these old images of slave trade, transatlantic slave trade that were happening in like 16th and 17th century, but now with a slightly different organization. And so the work itself consists of 3 large-scale digital prints, 3 images that are accompanied. The images are mostly done in this abstract visual language that are accompanied with an audio guide that is something that is very typical and familiar for the museum situation, that somehow feeds and explains the position of the image and its relation to this topic of our work, Topographies of Coercion and Emancipation throughout 20th century, but also the topic of the entire exhibition, which is the stories from the traumatic past.